Hello, 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 hello. All right, here we are again on another Monday afternoon. Don't know who's there. There's about 8 of you waiting. Welcome. Do say and let me know whether all the technology is working for us. It's always useful to get some kind of feedback to start with. Thank you very much. Okay, so obviously we've got a standard delay on the chat. Right, so for those of you that are watching on playback, this is a live, clearly, and what tends to happen is that I'll take questions from you guys on the chat as we go through the next hour or so, maybe a little bit under the hour this week. JF, good to see you. Joseph, hello, hello, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. And if you want to go through the subject headings on a far more concise and edited version, then hopefully I will get time at some point to do an edit and you'll get the nuggets. But this is the place for the meandering chit-chat that many of us enjoy. Hello, Steve. Good to see you. How's the weather up there? It's, well, it is windy, but it is also quite cloudy and dull. So Nathan, hello. Good man, good man. Jim, good to see you. Susie, hello. And Nancy, hi. Good. Lovely to see you all there. So, as we move through the hour, there'll be less of my greetings to those that come along, but it doesn't always work that way. We're going to talk about, as it says on the thumbnail, geopathic stress, ley lines, earth energy, and that sort of thing. So we're going to start to kind of go through some of the core aspects of I guess what's involved in the house healing work that I do in a way. But what I'm not going to do, I can't go into the same amount of detail I do with my mentoring clients, obviously. This is very much about very broad brushstrokes and general introductions to some of the concepts. And in some cases, updating some of the content that's out in some of the 150 or so videos on the channel. So do bear with us and see how we go. But obviously, I invite questions as we go through at any stage. So don't feel that you've got to wait and kind of try and shoehorn in a question that's particularly appropriate at a particular time, because we may never get to it. So the best thing is to actually just put a @TimWalter, and I can see it clearly if it's directed directly at me. And I'll try and fit it in as we go through in a kind of logical fashion. Guys, Andy, good to see you. Hello. Melinda, hi. New England, cloudy over there. Hugo, good to see you all the way from Canada. Maeve Calvert, Sherwood Forest, excellent, lovely. Deneen Rose, Massachusetts, whoa, lovely. Okay, oh, very dark history. Okay, Deneen, we'll see how this goes for you then. Yeah, okay. So there may be, I don't know how long you've been in that house. There may be a reason why you were attracted to it in the first place, and maybe you can really help that house flourish, turn around its dark history from the surroundings. Just see how we go. Martin, good to see you. Plymouth, good man. Good, okay, excellent. So you've moved that, Hugo, that's fantastic. David, nice to see you. Nice to see you. The neighbor was educating you on compost. Not in it, I hope. Yes, good. Windy there, Ellen. I can't remember where you are. Where are you, Ellen? Windy on the other side of the globe. And how's everybody doing with the COVID-19, with lockdown, etc., etc.? Here in the UK, it's easing a bit, but I noticed today, just before I came on stream, that Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, I think, and the Humberside area has actually got, it's not a laughing matter, has the highest cases in the UK, massively higher than London, apparently, at the moment. So I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm not going to read anything into it, he says, looking out the window. Anyway, Ellen, remind me where you live. I like to know the answers to these things. Good. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. Last week I talked about the new course that I'm doing for house healers. People are interested in house healing. There's a couple of you that might be watching this on playback. Oh, Middle Island, excellent. Okay, right. Lovely to know. Good, good, good. We talked about the house healing course that I'm doing. There's a couple of you I haven't replied to. You sent me emails. I will get back to you very, very soon on that. That is all now more or less full. I'm debating whether to expand it a little bit, but we'll see. So that's good. But the other thing, don't forget, folks, is that we've got this private group on Zoom. The first Monday of each month. And that is the healing and meditation group that we're going to be doing. Okay, so that will enable us to go into subjects, go into healing, hopefully for the group, those in the group. So that's the starting. First one will be on the 1st of June. And that will be a little later in the afternoon. So I think I'm running at about 6 p.m. BST. So if you can make that, that'd be great. I do have to charge for that one. I do need to start, I'm afraid, putting some kind of cost structure into place here, because otherwise none of us will be here. So bless you. So that's 888 there. Now let's see if I can just pop a link in. I don't know whether this is going to work. Yeah, so if you go to that page on my website, you can sign up for that if you want to be a part of that healing and meditation group. I want it to be rather like this, but as I say, we can start to look at some of the issues that we're maybe going through and try to work on some healing for the group, but also some healing and meditation for the wider environment too. So we'll see how that goes. If people are not interested, on an ongoing basis, then obviously we'll close it down. But I'm hoping that we might be able to get some kind of momentum going with that, because that'd be quite, it's always quite interesting to do that sort of thing. I did something like that, but not live, some time ago. Thunderstorms in Provence. Well, Provence has got to have a little bit of thunderstorminess every now and again. It's such a beautiful area. Jenny, nice to see you. Okay. Oh, okay, Doreen, Deneen, right. Okay, let's see where that goes. Let's see what we'll do. Right. If you're new to dowsing, Deneen, this might be a little bit, you might, okay, just see how it goes, right? Don't, Deneen, this is specifically for you. Don't dive into something if you're not sure about where you're going or how to put your toes into the arena, okay? So we'll be talking in some very basic terms today about aspects. And there'll be some stuff that you can get on with if you're new to dowsing, you get on with and get practicing with, but don't immediately go diving in. And one of the main things that everybody will know that's a regular is I do like you to get in the habit of doing some psychic protection. So Deneen, if you look on my channel and Google psychic protection, I won't do it now because I'm going to get myself completely confused. Google psychic protection and just do that as a little exercise. Obviously, I don't know where you are in your spiritual path, so I don't know how much you're aware of these sort of things, but do that before you start doing dowsing and stuff, okay? It's a good habit to get into, good practice to get into. All right, okay, so this really, we're coming on to this stuff, this geopathic stress and looking at earth energy and ley lines, because Nathan, who is here under a name of something else, which I've forgotten, Reese, there you go, Reese Cusack. Nathan actually asked me the question last time about, he actually said, would you be able to explain cross energy lines and geopathic stress and what can occur in those circumstances? And that really was a question for those that are learning, I suspect, like Deneen. So it's a great question. And of course, really, it opens up the whole can of worms. And I didn't have time last week to even start to approach it as an answer or anything. So it occurs to me that it would be a really good way to start to go back to basics. Geopathic stress, let's get some of the basics in place so that the more experienced dowsers amongst you can kind of think about what we talk about now and look at what you can find with your dowsing, taking that on from, just finding the earth energy power center, okay? But we're going to go back over stuff, we're going to repeat stuff, you're going to hear things that you've heard before. But hopefully, you can join some more dots, but it's always useful, okay? The other thing I'd like to say is next week here in the UK, next Monday is a holiday, so there won't be any live going on next Monday, but then the following week is the meditation and healing. So we'll be back doing the live stream in 3 weeks time. 3 weeks time. Is that what I mean? Yeah, the 8th of June. Okay. So now I keep looking down here because obviously I've got some notes. Okay, so let me just, okay, yeah. So the notes that I write is sort of general brain dump before we go live. And what I find, is that I get, obviously link point to point to point. The best thing is, as we go through this, is hello Margie, nice to see you, is to shout out, because last week in particular with the health based program, it really took off on an interesting angle, and there were a lot of really, really good questions. So don't be reluctant or reticent in putting a question in. In all of this work, when we start to work in the subtle realms in my language is about all of this stuff to do with spirit. So the energy, subtle energy, is basically all of those aspects of force within our awareness that can't be categorized by science as the big forces like gravity and weak electromagnetic forces or whatever. I don't actually know what the specification is, but in science there is a subtle energy they classify it as something, and what I refer to it as is this energy that is even dealing with the layer of thought and spirituality. So it's incredibly subtle, incredibly small amounts of impulse and wavelength and energy, force and flow. I'm not yet making much sense here, but I guess what I'm getting at is that we go right to the basics of dealing with the usual stuff of what we think, and it goes beyond the law of attraction, because it's not all just about positive thinking and you attract into your life what you think about. It's more than that. It's deeper than that. And actually, I think we go into areas where we really do question what it means to be a human being. Now that sounds incredibly pretentious, and I guess maybe it is, but I think that's the only way that I can describe it, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to me what we do. If we're not looking at it in terms of exploring the subtle energies and trying to understand how we, as our point of awareness, fits into the picture that we see and experience, which we call daily life, then there's actually no point in doing anything with it. If you can't do something with it, you can't do something practical with what you're discovering and learning and becoming more aware of, then there's no point in doing it. It needs to be applied to something. That's only my personal opinion. Hassan, interesting. Hello. Tom, good to see you. Yeah, I don't use charts, Hassan, so I'm afraid you're in the wrong forum for that. I don't mean to put you off, but also everything you're writing is coming out 3 times. If you can do that just the once, that would be excellent. If you look at, I wouldn't know who to suggest for the pendulum dowsing, using a chart, but I don't use them. If you look at the map dowsing video that I made some time ago, you'll see the way that I work with a floor plan. And that's the basic, hey Diggsy, how you doing? The basic method that I tend to use, okay? Some people do, they enjoy working with a chart, and they'll wait for the pendulum to indicate a direction that is on the chart. And that's all you have to do with that. But for me, that doesn't work, I don't like it. I use the finger and a pendulum. Okay, so Keith, hello, excellent. Good to see you. Another one from Massachusetts. You obviously got a center of sensitive people in Massachusetts. So you can detect geopathic stress. Geopathic stress, generally, what is it? I have seen it classified simply as detrimental earth energy vibrations within a house. Now, to me, that doesn't really capture it. I mean, I regard geopathic stress in a house as being a whole cacophony of influences from the environment, subtle influences from the environment, subtle energy influences from the environment, which includes earth energy, but it also includes ley lines, as we'll talk about in a minute. And it includes our own physical energy in terms of the emotional energy that we emit. Okay, so as individuals, we have, as we know, we have the personal energy, personal auric field. And within that auric field, we've got a whole history of who we are. Emotional trauma is stored in that electrical field that surrounds us. And it's very, very likely that a lot of mediumistic work is done by just picking up the information that is in the auric field within that presence. Doesn't demean mediumship at all, but there's it's very, very easy in mediumship terms to actually just pick up information from this, this electrical field that extends around everybody. It's about that, and then it'll go much, much subtler, much more faint, and therefore it's got, considerably harder information to pick up. There is a school of thought that actually that's the basic premise of everything that you experience that is in your reality. It's simply that energy field emanating out from your heart and the rest of your system that is creating what you perceive in that sense. Okay, so there's a lot of information in there. JF, I don't know whether you're putting the links in there, my friend, but they're not coming out. Map dowsing video on Tim's channel. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't expect you to do that, but it's nice. I haven't made you a moderator or anything, so. So geopathic stress is a combination of many, 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 many different aspects of subtle energy. To me, this is my classification, and in all of this work, the labels that we use are incredibly fluid, and some people will use one label, one name for one aspect, while somebody else will use a different name, different label for the same thing. And this brings us to ley lines and earth energy, which let's get this out of the way to start with, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about earth energy. Because I made a video some time ago about the differences between earth energy and ley lines, and in that I think I used the term theoretical lines to apply to ley lines. My understanding, my feelings about ley lines has changed a little bit more since then. I think I made that video about 4 or 5 years ago. Ley lines are significant, but the differences between ley lines and earth energy is that ley lines tend to be straight. Ley lines are straight alignments, and you can use a map and you can plot ley lines. You can see ley lines on a map by looking for specific historical, archaeological, sort of sacred sites, and all of those sort of things. Alfred Watkins came up with the concept of ley lines. He had a vision in the 1920s, which he then wrote about, but he saw them, Alfred Watkins saw them as trade routes, as tracks across the countryside. Now, he never got into any of the stuff that was then later added to the concept of ley lines, which was like Jean-Michel talking about the way that they might have influenced extraterrestrials and this sort of thing. So ley lines have become part of the New Age movement and have taken on far more esoteric and mystical attributes than they were ever given by Alfred Watkins. Alfred Watkins was apparently a very logical and practical man, and he actually used to go out into the landscape and just simply enjoy trying to find these paths and tracks, which were not necessarily visible in the actual landscape, but certainly he could plot them on a map. Now, what we see from these things is that they tended to form a straight alignment through many sacred sites. So if we take the Michael and Mary, the Michael alignment, actually it's called, so the Michael alignment is the actual alignment of sacred sites across the south of England, from Cornwall, which is down in the southwest, over to Suffolk, sort of east coast. And so the Michael alignment is the alignment of the physical sacred sites along the way. That includes Glastonbury, it includes Avebury, down in Cornwall, it includes, it kind of hits English coast at Marazion, which is St Michael's Mount down there. And goes all the way through, and I can't remember where it goes through, leaves the coast in Suffolk, can't remember what it's called, but so that's the Michael alignment. Now, you can plot a more or less straight line on the map, following those major sacred sites, And that lines up with, I think it's this, it might be the summer solstice or something like that. I'm not sure, can't remember. But anyway, so you can plot that. And that's a ley line. That's the ley line. There it is, right? That big thing. Now, what Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst did, as described in their book, The Sun and the Serpent, was they actually plotted the Earth energy flows, which went around that central straight alignment. So they followed the Earth energy flows, which meandered like a river around that central alignment and took in most of the sacred sites along the Michael alignment. Now, obviously, they found the Michael and the Mary lines, the two aspects of that energy, quite rightly, in balance. And therefore, they called those Michael and Mary, the male and female type energy. Okay, so let me just catch up with some of these. I'll come to all the faces in a second. Good to see you, Diggsy. I know it's way in the middle of the night there for you. Hope your little one is doing okay. Okay. Okay, yeah, I need JF. I need to obviously give you moderator status, which I don't think I can do at the moment, but maybe we'll try that for next time, and you and Billy can both have moderation. Billy's exhausted at the moment, so I'm afraid she can't join us, or she may be in the background, but just watching. Nathan, is it because some people are more sensitive than others due to how geostress affects people differently? Yes, it is, absolutely. Archeos Salisbury, what a great handle. You focused on conventional scientific thought for decades now. I think this is preventing me from accomplishing anything psychic. How do I break through? Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah, well, Archeos, if you can bear with us and just sort of just sit and enjoy what we're talking about and think about it, because you can absolutely break through in that way. It is about allowing your intuitive self, your creative mind, to override your logic. And there are many dowsers that are scientific based. So dowsing, for somebody that has come from a very conventional scientific background, actually is a really great way of starting to access and open up. So bear with us, Archeos, if you can. Yeah, okay, so I'll come back to that one, Nathan, in a sec. So Earth energy, unlike ley lines, Earth energy is a natural part of the Earth's electrical field, that sort of thing. We talk about, there's another thing that is actually recognized more by the scientific community, which is telluric currents. Now, telluric currents are literally electrical flows of energy. So they are measured, they can be measured, and they flow around the planet, and they're formed by the movement of the Earth through going through space and interacting with the atmosphere and friction and all this sort of stuff. Again, that's not scientific, but bear with me. So telluric currents are recognized by the scientific community. Earth energy isn't. But Earth energy is very similar to that. But there are so many aspects to Earth energy, because Earth energy is just the label that dowsers primarily have, and other spiritual sort of explorers or whatever you like to call it. But it's what dowsers have called this energy that we can pick up, and the energy that flows like a river across a landscape. Now, it will have an electrical aspect, I don't doubt, but I tend to think of Earth energy as being very, very integral to the structure of our reality, of how we perceive everything. And I know the regulars have heard this, but let me repeat it here. And so what I learned, I learned a lot of this stuff from the spirit in the house that we moved into in 1998, and has later been corroborated not only by books and magazine articles like some of the New Scientist magazine articles about neuroscience and stuff like that, but also in meeting other people. So what I understand is that Earth energy is very much like a focused aspect of the 0 point field, the quantum 0 point field, from which everything in physical form is manifest. Now, Now, clearly, that's a vast leap of logic and a vast assumption. But one day, I have no doubt the science will prove it, and that's fine. So what I'm getting at, the fundamental of this is, don't get confused by the science, don't get confused by all the labels that we all use. And I'll come back to that in a second as to why that's not important. But just focus on the fact that Earth energy primarily is natural. It's a natural part of life here on Earth. And again, it doesn't matter how you perceive Earth. It doesn't matter, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter. These things still can be found and can be worked with, and you can get responses from them with your heart and mind, and with dowsable responses. And ley lines are something that you can plot, and will tend to be, this is why I used the word theoretical in the previous video from years ago. They tend to be more like a line of intention. Okay, so we can deliberately put lines into the ether, into the 0-point field. One could just think of a line and throw it down effectively, and it will occur, and a dowser will come along and they'll find it. Ley lines are like that. They are like lines that people have followed or confirmed their presence of, and therefore they've taken on a very subtle form, the ley line. So they're dowsable. You can dowse a ley line. You can find a ley line. You can find out whether you've got a ley line running through your house. Are all ley lines detrimental to the people living in the house? No, they're not. Are Earth energy lines connected to ley lines? Well, yes, they can be, but not always. So if you find a ley line, does it mean that you've got Earth energy present? Well, the fact is that Earth energy will always be present in some form, because we live in a sea of Earth energy. And what we pick up as Earth energy lines are just focused, more concentrated aspects of it, rather like the lines of iron filings that you get around the magnet's poles, right? You get that pattern if you shake the iron filings around a line of magnet. It's the sort of school child pupils. Sorry, my language has just disappeared. It's like that little experiment that school children do with a magnet. You put a magnet on there, and then you get the iron filings, and you get those lines. Earth energy is like that. It's got a magnetic aspect to it as well, right? The main thing is it's intimately connected with the energy system that we have. Intimately connected. So our brain being an electrical thing, and our bodies being fundamentally electrical, we are intimately connected to Earth energy. And this is part of how we we manifest and create and interact with our physical environment. Let me come back to your questions, because I did ask for questions. And also let me know if I'm at the moment just waffling with no kind of guide, if I'm making sense or not. Deneen, right. Okay, yeah, good. Well, ley lines, quite often you can find that processional routes, or even when you're carrying a coffin, what's that called? Anyway, sometimes the lines to the churches would line up with ley lines, and you can find that sometimes still. But processional routes can be have their own energy as well. Detrimental lines, the underground water flows will cause their own dowsable detrimental aspects on the surface for some people. And the point is, with all of this geopathic stress, is it's not like saying, well, actually it's extremely similar to the way that any illness or virus, even if we think about the COVID-19 virus, you can take a room full of 100 people And not all of those 100 people are going to get ill from the COVID-19 virus. It's the same thing with geopathic stress. You could have everybody in a house, you could have 100 people in a house, where there is one person, for example, suffering from geopathic stress, suffering from the effects, the detrimental effects of something subtle in the environment. One person maybe out of those 100. It's but nobody else might notice anything. Okay, now, so it's entirely down to the individual, and this is where there's a great strength in being able to understand your own self as an individual, and the way that, unfortunately, the mainstream medical professions are becoming less and less able to actually treat individuals. They are actually looking, because they're looking for the lowest common denominator and the greatest effect upon the greatest number of people, right? When they're doing their calculations and they're reading the data. So they're actually kind of coming to a point where they're looking for the average of something. So they'll produce statins, for example, let's say, that can affect X number of people. And they expect, bizarrely, that the same pharmaceutical will have the same effect on an individual, on every single individual that it's given to, which is complete nonsense, because every individual is unique. And this is why geopathic stress, when you're dealing with somebody that's highly sensitive. So those of you in the funeral roads, that's it, yeah. Thanks, John. Those of you that are in the chat that are experiencing geopathic stress. So Dixie, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning it, but Dixie, we talk about earth energy lines or ley lines. Dixie tends to refer to them as rays, earth rays, and that's fine. Poor old fellow, he gets affected by them. So he is particularly sensitive to those. Other people, Deneen from earlier on, she may well be more affected by the spiritual aspect of a place, perhaps. We don't know. I don't know. I haven't speak to Dixie, good man. So, and the reason that Dixie is affected by Earth rays is purely, well, it's not purely anything. It's not as this is making it sound simple. It's oversimplifying, but it's simply, you know, if I was in a room with Dixie, I would not be feeling, or I wouldn't sleep as badly as Dixie does. Now, he's just unfortunate in having that, he's out of sync with that particular aspect that is upsetting him. That's not to say that it's not curable. It's not to say that we can't reduce, or he can't reduce the effects, but it's a matter of finding out how. What is wrong? Why is this not sitting comfortably with him? And sometimes it is about looking at the history of trauma for the individual. So we're looking at the personal energy, and this is why it's included in my world as part of the issues of geopathic stress, because personal energy does affect the way that somebody exists and is affected by things like earth energy, earth rays, ley lines, and this sort of thing. Does this make sense at the moment? I'm hoping it does. Let's come back and try and go through in a bit of the logical way about this earth energy and stuff. So, oh yeah, actually here I've got on my notes here, just jumping back a little bit to subtle energy. Subtle energy, a good definition. This might even have been from Wikipedia. I don't know. I just grabbed a few things good to kind of highlight what we're going to be talking about. Subtle energy is considered to be any energy that is not one of the four forces of nature. In other words, it's not a weak force, a strong force, electromagnetic force, or a gravitational force. Those are the forces that science works with. It can be the energy we experience after vigorous exercise, or the feeling we get when someone we feel strongly about looks right at us. So it's that energy, that implication, and all the rest of it that goes on inside. Your intuitive feelings are a form of subtle energy, as are your thoughts. And that's what I agree with completely. Your intuitive feelings as a human being are a form of subtle energy. They have a power, they have an influence. and they are, as are your thoughts. And so these aspects, these aspects cannot be taken in isolation. So if we again come back to Diggsy, using him a lot as an example in this instance today, but if we say that Diggsy is influenced detrimentally by earth energy, earth rays, as he calls them, so earth energy in my book, there'll be other things affecting him, but the symptom is that he knows there's an energy line that comes in, and he knows that if he does X, Y, Z, then he can get some relief from it. But he also believes that that relief will taper off and he'll go back to square one. So in that sense, we're looking at a symptom because it's symptomatic. It's not, we haven't got to the cause. He's being affected by the earth rays, by the earth energy line, but it's not the cause of why he's feeling out of sorts necessarily. In other words, there could be another aspect. When we do the house healing work, we're working with over 50 section headings that we look into and we doubt and we ask questions about. And those don't always necessarily give us an answer straight away. I mean, I've done a bit of work with Diggsy, and I think he got a bit of temporary relief from it, but it hasn't proved to be something that sticks. Okay, so he's got a system, so he uses rods, so he puts a rod in, a metal rod in place, and that will just divert it. I'm not sure. Oh, Diggsy, does that mean you're doing it yourself, mate? I hope so. That'd be excellent if you are. I think the next stage is get you on to just doing it with your mind. Okay, cool, excellent. So you are doing it. Oh, brilliant, that's great. Well, that's a good step forward. That's really, really good. So, but they could, I mean, okay, so I'm going to carry on using Diggsy as an example here because he's here and he's awake. Bless him, he's in Australia, which is why I say it's late over there. Excellent, good man. Good. That is really good. Now, so see this with Diggsy here kind of links into what I was talking about in the last recorded video that I put online on Saturday, which is when in that video I was talking about geopathic stress in relation to maybe hearing voices in your head, because sometimes what happens is that people will basically they'll approach me because they say, look, I've got voices in my head, I don't understand what's going on. Okay, so let's rule out schizophrenia as a mainstream diagnosis. We'll just put that to one side. If you've got voices in your head, which I'll come back to earth energy in a second, you'll see why I'm relating it to this. But if you've got voices in your head, it's sometimes a way that spirit, the management, is saying, right, time for you to now start to address your spiritual side, start to look at life differently. Here is an opportunity for us to help change the way that you see the world. And Deneen, again, coming back to your point, it might be that this is why you've ended up living in the house that you're living in. So what I'm getting at is that the management spirit, eventually our ultimate creator, has a way of bringing us to a point of awareness if that is part of our life's journey, intentional, something that we've agreed to before we've come down here. Okay, so in Diggsy's sense, it may well be that he was suffering from a poor sleep due to these earth rays, because actually, I think Diggsy will agree that he's done a lot of work on himself. I can't verify that, but he may have done a lot of work for himself, which is still taking him on a spiritual path and taking him to be a place of greater well-being. Like me, I mean, it has to at some point come back to me. I'm kidding. But my, as the regulars know, I do this because of my life changed so much from what it used to be to now, and this is why I do this, to help other people. David, yeah, you worked in London in the 80s. Yeah, sick of syndrome. No, since moving to Bath, maybe it was pollution. Well, no, sick of syndrome. Sick building syndrome, all that sort of stuff, very real, David. And in fact, I've had a guy on my last year's house healing mentoring scheme, and he cleared an office that he was working in through using the process, and people were commenting like, yeah, gosh, don't feel anywhere near as bad working here now as I used to, and they didn't know that he'd been doing the work on the office building. So I do sometimes refer to, and some of the publicity, to refer to sick building syndrome, because quite often a lot of the symptoms, feeling sick, etc. I mean, literally feeling sick is one of the classics. You can eliminate that by doing the spiritual clearing work on a building, and that can change, which is really quite nice. So what I'm getting at is, when you have a house that is suffering from geopathic stress, one of the things to think about is not only the things that we can find, but also the concept of what's happening. So with a house, is it that you're at a stage in life where change is required? You might even have been feeling that change was going to occur, that something had to change in your life, that you were thinking there's got to be more to life than whatever it was you were experiencing. And so if you've been having those sort of thoughts for a while and kind of getting more interested in the esoteric, and then you find that actually, oh, things are changing in the house, what's going on? Or you move to a house where actually, which is what we did, we moved to a house and then things were like, whoa, no, this is weird, because we had a presence of a ghost, a spirit of a deceased lady in the house. And that, of course, opened up the whole spiritual aspect. So what I'm saying is the concept, the context of the geopathic stress is one of the aspects to always consider. Okay? And usually, as we've touched on before, usually what has been a burden, and again, we'll go back round to Dixie, the burden of not being able to sleep because of the earth rays, it could well now blossom into something that is really, really beneficial for him because he's changing and understanding. Same for all of us, same for Tom. You remember that I once looked in the mirror and said, yeah, this can't carry on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, exactly. Now, Tom's a really sensitive guy. And so one of the aspects of being sensitive, and as all of you highly sensitive people out there will know, is that actually you start to get thoughts and awareness, before an instance occurs. So if that's a life-changing incident, I'm not even going to give an example, but if that's a life-changing incident, then the sort of pre-echo of that will start to emanate out, and you can quite often pick this up quite a way beforehand. Okay, so that's context. And this is context of you thinking and regarding yourself as an individual co-creator. It's not about you creating solely a mess that you've ended up living in. It's not that at all. Because if you start to think of it like that, then that means that you end up in a blame game, and you end up disappearing down a spiral of guilt and self-sabotage, which is not the idea, and it never would have been the idea. Life is not supposed to be full of that kind of oppressive, self-destructive thinking, right? There are aspects of it, because obviously with everything in balance, you've got the depressive, low energy thinking, which is counterbalanced by the extremes of the massive opportunities for high and love and compassion and all of the good things that we can experience in life as a human being. There's always that balance. Earth energy is the most significant aspect for me as a house healer. It's the one that I enjoy searching for, finding, working with the most. Partly because that's what got me into it, but also because it's the most fascinating, because it directly links into the creation of reality. And that's the key thing. The only thing you need to remember if you walk away with anything, just one thing from today: earth energy is key to the creation of your experience of reality. It links in because you are, okay, so it's the concept. You understand, do you all understand what I mean by the experience of your reality? I mean, literally. I'm laughing because I think, am I going too basic? I mean, I know that a lot of you regulars will completely get it and understand, but when we are sitting within our lives and experiencing, as the seconds tick by, our experience of living and being alive and being a physical being, we forget that this needn't be like this, right? It's like this because there's an energy creating it and sustaining it. Now, obviously, we are created and sustained by the life force. And again, earth energy connects into that life force. It connects into that way that we process the appearance of the world around us and the way that we experience it. We are locked into experiencing the world in the way that we experience it by our histories, which is held within our body. Our bodies serve as memory banks. So all the trauma that we've had in the past, no matter how small that trauma might be, if you're a highly sensitive person, it's like being hit by a train or a truck, and that energy of that trauma goes within unless you deal with it at the time. Remember how animals deal with shock and change? They shake themselves vigorously. We don't do that. We've lost that. We don't do that. But what they're doing there is kind of resetting their energy field. You know, we sometimes go into a room and go, oh, blimey, don't like that. You know, you say, don't you, somebody walked over your grave and you've got a shiver. But quite often what you find when you're healing and you're dealing with the past trauma is that you're actually going through a trembling process. You can start to tremble if you're going through healing, deep healing, emotional healing that's actually going to change something in your world and change you. And that energy, that shaking, is because your muscles are letting go. They're letting go of that trauma. So, but we hang on to the memories. We are our memories. And the only way you start to reframe and change the way you relate to everything, and this applies to geopathic stress as much as everything else, is to actually recognize that you are not your memories. You are something that experienced those things, but you are not the memory. And more importantly, you are not your parents' memory. You see, your energy, the energy of the issues that your parents had, because everybody has issues, everybody has baggage, that energy is passed across along with everything else. So if you're a particularly gifted musician and you get that from your parents, you also get other aspects. You get some of the baggage aspects as well, passing across. I know, science doesn't say that, but energy workers of any kind will know that and recognize that, because that is the case. Okay? So this is why ancestor healing is important. And this is why, as another aspect of geopathic stress, on the list of section headings that we work with, following the modality that I work with, which is based upon Adrian Inglewood and Webber's Heal Your Home modality, we include things like past lives. So we go pretty woo-woo when we start to talk about past lives, but there's an energy sometimes that really can affect the current state of being. And if you think about it in terms of memory, there's an energetic memory going back sometimes that can affect people into past life situations. Yes, indeed, Kathy. Perfect. I really should listen to some more or watch some more YouTube, Alan Watts, or read some more. He does say, I get a lot of people quoting him at me, which is lovely. Okay, so let me just, sorry, just going to catch up here. Alan, maybe he's clearly and... Sorry, Alan, maybe he's clearly and healing, but it does take time till you know this candle lit here was wondering why. No, I'm not sure what you're trying to get at there, Alan, sorry. I know Digsy is healing, but anywho. Okay, oh, so I think maybe you've had a, maybe you're not talking to me. Right, okay, sorry. Sorry, Alan. Right. This is why these lives become chaotic. So let's come back a little bit back to Earth energy. Our thoughts, our memories, us, our traumas, everywhere we go, we're in this sea of Earth energy, and everywhere we go, we carry those traumas, that baggage, those fears, those desires, those wants, those thoughts. We emanate them from our being, from our physical being, through those electrical processes, tying in with our heart or not, tying it to our heart, emanating out into the ether, into the Earth energy, the sea of Earth energy. There's a phrase that is coined, I've heard it a few times, where we live in this intelligent ether. Now, ether was a phrase that science used to use to describe the presence that would be in a vacuum. And they threw, I think it was Einstein that threw the concept of ether out the window. But actually, if we think about the 0-point field, and in a way that is the ether, I think scientifically that's probably not quite correct, but you know what I mean. There always used to be considered a aspect of reality that was everywhere, but it was intangible. It was impossible. You couldn't see it. It was invisible. And there's a modern expression, which is the intelligent ether. And the reason that we say it's an intelligent ether, and the reason that I regard Earth energy as being the intelligent ether, is because we can very much see it when we dowse. As we've talked about so many times, the responses you can get from the power center, the Earth energy power center. For those that are new, because there's a couple of new people here, Earth energy is usually considered to be flowing in lines, like we said, as a river, but also you find swirling vortices within Earth energy. Typically, these are at crossing points. So if you think about the Michael and Mary line, the big Earth energy channels, because Earth energy channels vary in size from the big channels like the Michael and Mary lines, down to tiny little faint little lines that can be found everywhere. So it's like the blood supply system. You've got the major arteries, but you go right down to the little capillaries that are distributing blood around your tissues. So Earth energy is everywhere, and you will find if you find a positive Earth energy line, you can dowse for a positive Earth energy line in your house, and you can pick up that line right with your rod. Boom, there it is. It'll be there. Now, if you follow that line for a little distance, what you'll find is that you'll walk on, and then you'll find a little spiral, and then you'll walk on again, and you find another little spiral, and you walk on again, you find another little spiral. And you could walk, let's say you walked 50 feet, 100 feet, you would actually be walking around in circles about 10 times at least in that 50 feet, right? Well, not quite that, but about 5 times in that 50 feet, about every 10 feet or so. Now, Hamish Miller, who doused the Michael and Mary line, said, "No, this is nonsense. There aren't these things in there, but there are. You can find them. You'll find them. It's just the flow of the line is like that. But when you come across a spiral in the Earth energy, it's because there's a vortices. So 3-dimensionally, it's a vortex, and so therefore it's giving you that vertical height perception, right? Because obviously we're in a 3-dimensional world." Where am I going? Well, obviously, these spirals are significant because I tell the regulars to go and dowse and sit and meditate at the most powerful and most beneficial Earth energy center in your home. So you find it with dowsing. And you've got this lovely connection because you're sitting there with this energy, and it's basically coming down, straight down, rather than sort of angle or whatever, depleted. I don't know what the science is. I don't understand how that positioning makes a difference, but it does make a difference. When you find a crossing point on a major earth energy flow, like the Michael and Mary lines, and you get the big crossing points of Michael and Mary, you get a lovely, wonderful, powerful vortex of earth energy. Again, if you think about any massive sacred site, like obviously in the UK, people that have been to Glastonbury, you go up on the tour, so there's quite a mound. I'm pretty sure it's man-made, but they don't say it's man-made. It's got the remains of a church on the top, and there's a fantastic power center on one side of it, and it blows your socks off, sends your consciousness way out of your body. So earth energy and ley lines are not all detrimental. Always remember that. So when you're dowsing and looking for stuff in your house, if you're looking for the detrimental stuff, you ask to be shown the detrimental aspect. But by far the better, if you're starting to douse and you're learning to douse and you're just dabbling and starting to look into the wellness of your house or where you live, then ask for the positive stuff to start with. Ask to be shown these positive aspects so that you can douse and get familiar with the way they feel, because there's a feeling to earth energy. There's a feeling to dowsing. Dowsing is very much about just being aware of what's going on in your body and what you're picking up. It's not about watching what your rod does or watching what your pendulum does. It's about the inner process. JF, that's a really good question, because actually earth energy lines can indeed make knots. One of the last conversations I had with dear old Hamish Miller, actually, before he passed away, was that he had been to a house. He was called out to this house to do some healing work on it, and he couldn't figure out for a while what was wrong, because it wasn't like there was a spirit presence there that needed moving on. But what he'd plotted the basic lines coming through. There were basic earth energy lines that were not in a very good state. He didn't used to really use this term detrimental, but they were pretty detrimental. But he said he couldn't figure it out, and then he realized what it was that they were actually all knotted together. So the vortices had all, it's like software being corrupted. It's like coding being corrupted. Just it only takes a little bleep and the whole code doesn't make sense. And so therefore, in that sense, you get a knot. I always visualized it like rats' tails. Rats, bless them, can get themselves so wound up and intricately connected in the where they live that their tails knot, and then they all die because they can't move. And that's a little bit like a knotted earth energy line to me. Archeos, Ken Wheeler, thanks for sticking with us, Archeos. Well done, thank you very much. Ken Wheeler explains the science of ether and helped bring me around to believing in the spiritual through science. Oh, fantastic. He explains literally everything. His channel name is Theoria. Right, there you go. There you go, Ken Wheeler. So dig him out. It is good. The ether, yeah, it's great, good, excellent. I'm really pleased. But thank you for that. Thank you. Fantastic. So I think what will be really good for you, Archeos, will be to get some dowsing done. Get in there, roll your sleeves up if you can. Think about earth energy as the ether, right? That's what I'd say to you. Think about earth energy, what I call earth energy. Think about it as the ether, and just ask some questions about. Go ask. Stand in your house where you live, and ask for the most positive. Ask to be shown the most positive earth energy power center in the house, and your rods will move. Go to it. Just make a couple of rods out of a bent bit of welding wire or something like that. Missing secrets of magnetism. Yeah, cool. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's great. Yeah, because that makes sense. It is electromagnetic, geomagnetic, blah, blah, blah. I will read it. I will dig it out. I'll have a look for it on Amazon. Thank you, Archeos. See if you can make a pair of rods for yourself. Just bend some if you haven't tried dowsing yet. I'm going to do some basic videos about for dowsing for beginners, some really basic ones, just so that we can just go bop, 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 learn to douse. There you go, follow those. There are various videos all over the channel about dowsing and how best to do it, but I think that I need to just do ABC and we'll go on from there. Okay, guys, so we're going to wrap it up. I have been wittering, and I do feel like I was, hey, I always say this, don't I, at this time? Certainly there are bits that I didn't think I was flowing very well, but I hope that you guys have found it helpful. The takeaway is that earth energy lines, ley lines are different. Earth energy, think about it like the ether, think about it like you're living in the sea of earth energy, but it has an intelligence and awareness. You can communicate with it. It wants you to communicate with it. That's what we're designed for, living in that ether or earth energy. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll get onto that, Archeos, and I'll see if I can do a video that might help you. So keep your eyes peeled over the next couple of weeks, if you can. So that's the takeaway. Think about that and think about that. So if you're living in a house that is feeling troubled, what I suggest as a novice dowser is that you ask for the positive stuff first, because there will be positive stuff. Don't go looking for the detrimentals to start with. The situation that you're in, depending on how severe it is, could take a little while. But then if you want to do it yourself, then you're going to be on a massive learning curve, and that's fine. Okay? But you're connecting through earth energy, you're connecting to your spiritual self, because that's what it is. It's a connector, it's a wave, a field of energy that takes you right back, if you want to follow it all the way back to the ultimate creator. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, so fantastic. Deneen, good. I'm glad that was helpful in some way. So no live next week. The following week is the meditation and the healing group. Click on the link if you want to be a part of that, £8.88. If anybody is interested in or has been thinking about joining me on this year's course, the house healing, then you better drop me a line, PDQ. Oh, good, David. Thank you. Good. I'm pleased. That's fine. I'm always going to do the freebies. No worries. Keith, bless you. Oh, I need to reply to you, Keith. I do need to reply to you. I've got a really nice little email I want to drop to you. So thank you, bless you. So we'll see you in on the 8th of June. And we'll carry on looking at some aspects of geopathic stress. As I say, these are quite broad and just sort of serving as an introduction, I think, really. And that's part of the structure of what these are about. So there you go. Okay, so see you soon and have a lovely weekend. I know it's only the beginning of the week, but I'm already gearing up to the bank holiday that we have here on Monday. I'll tell you why when I come back. All right, take care. Bye-bye now.